Welcome to your Aligned as Fuck Life podcast, hosted by your girl, Shalvika. I am a life transformation coach, a wife, a cat mom, pure generator, Enneagram 3, Pisces sign, and helping you build an aligned as fuck life is my jam. Out in this world, we believe that there are no set rules for building a life, career, and business. That we are all unique and we should be able to embrace our uniqueness in everything we do while shedding all the rules or bullshit rules one at a time. We will talk all things mindset, manifestation, healing, energetics, rituals, success, and so much more. I believe that I can have it all and you can too. Ready for an episode that will take you one step closer to your aligned as fuck life? Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of your aligned as fuck life. I am your host Shalvika, and I am just so fucking grateful that you are here listening to this episode, because today we are going to dive into something that is so bloody juicy. It is such groundbreaking work, to be honest, just to observe whether you have a wounded inner child. So yeah, as you may have guessed from the title of the podcast, today we are going to talk about signs that your inner child is wounded. And I know I sound really happy talking about this, but it's not because I'm going to prove to you that you have your inner child wounded, because trust me, most of us have inner child issues, right? But the reason why I sound so happy is because awareness is the first step towards bringing about a change. Unless you know that this is what is really happening with me, you cannot bring about any change. So that's why I sound happy. It's not because I am some bitchy person who likes people to have wounded inner child. It's really not about that. Okay then, let us dive in. So, as always, I have my small placard with all of my notes about what I'm going to talk about. I just want to sort of give you a disclaimer before we dive into all the aspects of this episode, that having your inner child wounded is not a reflection of how good or bad your parents or caregivers or people of authority in your life who raised you were. It is not a reflection on their character. It is just a reflection on the fact that they did not know better. It is a reflection on the fact that they didn't know they could choose another way of raising you. And just the idea, just the fact that you are here listening to this, bringing awareness and most likely bringing about a change from henceforth, is a sign that you are breaking that pattern. You are breaking the fucking chain, and I'm so bloody proud of you. I just wanted to say that. Alrighty, let's dive in. Sign number one that you have a wounded inner child is that you struggle to say no. If you were brought up in a household where there was an utter lack of boundaries, where your caregivers, your parents, the adults responsible for raising you, were controlling in a way that they did not have any sense of boundaries and they expected you to not have any sense of boundaries, you struggle to say no. A lot of times this also happens because your sense of self-worth is attached to people pleasing. If you don't please the people around you, it makes you feel like you have failed or you are not doing as good in your job, in your life or your job. And that is what it really is a reflection of, right? And that's why you struggle to say no. One of the best things that you can do if you are someone who struggles to say no is start with making a list of situations that make you uncomfortable, situations that you feel that, Oh, I wish I had said no to him. Or, oh, I wish I had stopped this earlier, right? I wish I had stopped this before it got to this stage. If you have any sort of such situations in your life, I want you to kind of sit down and make a list of all of these situations where you struggle to say no. That is your first step towards getting out of this whole dilemma of whether I should say no. All right. Sign number two that your inner child is wounded is you feel inadequate or not good enough. This happens when your sense of self worth is tied externally. This happens when you were raised in an environment where you were told that if you get 80% marks in your school, you will be able to watch TV for 2 hours. Or if you finish the food that you're eating, you will be rewarded by a candy, right? And when this happens, that's not really how life works. Like, I know parents do this out of a sense of love, out of a space of rewarding, and I'm using air quotes here because I don't necessarily believe that that's rewarding, but parents do this from a sense of rewarding their children for good behavior without realizing that you're actually setting them up to anchor their success, to anchor their feeling of adequateness, to anchor their feeling of being enough outside, right? So, and that doesn't really happen in life, right? Like, you're not going to receive a candy every time you go for a workout. You're not going to receive a candy every time you go for a health checkup. You're not going to receive a candy every time you clean your home. That's not how human adult lives function, right? And that's where your feelings of not being good enough or feeling inadequate really stem from. And it is a sign of a wounded inner child because you are actually anchoring your feeling of good enoughness. I don't know if that's a word, but your feeling of good enoughness is anchored on something external, and that is always a problem. Your feeling of safety, your feeling of being enough, your feeling of worthiness, your feeling of being adequate needs to be anchored in your own self. It needs to stem from a space of self trust, self love, and an amazing level of self worth. That's when you have a healthy relationship with yourself. All right, sign number three that you have a wounded inner child. You tend to avoid conflict of any form, right? This happens when you were raised in an environment where you were told, don't raise your voice, don't share what you're thinking because you're gonna upset mama, you're gonna upset dad, and that actually makes you, like, leads your inner child to believe that every time you want to express your emotions, anytime you want to express your thoughts on a conflicting situation, you are actually driving other people's emotions, which actually, like, in simpler terms, it means that you feel responsible for other people's emotions because you were made responsible for other people's emotions when you were a child. And that's not really true. Everyone, each and every person is responsible for their own feelings and emotions. No one else can influence your emotions, and the same way you cannot influence anyone else's emotions. But because you were raised in the kind of environment where conflict was always brushed under the carpet, where you were held responsible anytime a conflict arose, you shirk away from, your inner child shirks away from that responsibility of other people's emotions. You don't want to handle that, and that's why you tend to avoid conflicts in any form. Sign number four, you feel like you have to be an overachiever. Now, this is something that I personally actually faced for a really long time, because I felt that I had to overachieve. I had to get all the scholarships. I had to get into a good college. I had to get like amazing kick ass marks, because my worth is determined by that, right? And this happens if you grew up in an environment where overachieving was rewarded, and not just that, but average achieving. Like if at any point you performed averagely, you were kind of reprimanded for it, or you were punished for it. Honestly, I'm 32 years old. Okay, I'm not 32. I am almost 32 years old as I record this podcast. But I still remember I was 10 years old, and I had just switched schools because we had moved cities, and my grades in the first semester back at the new school they weren't bad, honestly, but they weren't as good as they used to be. So I would always be in the top 3 in my class, because hello, overachiever here. And this one semester, because I had switched schools in the middle of the term, my grades slipped and I stood 8th in my class. And I remember going home and my mom sitting me down and telling me that you are now a big girl and you are responsible for your own results. But if you are not in those top 3 ranks, if you're not in those top 5 ranks, you're not going to end up in a good college, and that's going to affect how successful you're going to be in life. Maybe not in these words, but this is what my brain remembers it as, right? Like, this is what my inner child remembers it as. So since then, it had this massive seeding in my brain that I had to achieve a rank. I had to achieve good marks. I had to get I had to get placement into a good college, into a good job. I had to do well at my job. I had to get good ratings at my job, and so on and so forth. All of that really followed. Now, you may think that there is really nothing wrong with being an overachiever, right? Like, I mean, you are getting good grades, you're getting into a good college. What's wrong with that? The problem is if you're an overachiever at the expense of what you really want to do, at the expense of your own dreams, until it gets to a point where you are actually scared of being yourself. You are actually scared of detaching yourself from your achievements because you are not secure in your own person, which is what happened to me. And another flip side of being an overachiever is massive amount of burnout, right? So this is another sign that your inner child is wounded, because achievement was given a massive priority in your household while you were growing up, right? Sign number 5 that you have a wounded inner child is that you are ashamed or scared of expressing emotions. Human beings in the societies that we are raised in, the kind of societies that we are raised in, honestly, we really fall short in teaching our young ones, in teaching others while we are raising them, how to express their emotions, right? How to actually be in touch with your actual emotions and then express them. And that leads to us raising generations of human beings who are absolutely ashamed or scared of expressing emotions. And honestly, the whole idea, the whole corporate culture, capitalist environment that we are in doesn't really support you growing up to be a fully well-rounded emotional being. Human beings are emotional creatures. We are meant to express and regulate our emotions. Does that mean that you need to start throwing tantrums in the middle of Target or while you're out grocery shopping? No, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that if you're feeling hurt, if you're feeling sad, you should be able to comfortably express those emotions. You should be able to sit in a corner and cry if you're feeling sad. There's nothing wrong. In fact, it is such a massive release. I don't know if you've ever tried it, but I love doing this. Every once in a while, I'm gonna just sit on my couch or sit in my balcony, soaking the sun, and I just let go and cry my eyes out. Because it is such a release. Like, you have no idea. right? Because holding and storing emotions have impact on your bodily functions, have impact on your somatic system, have impact on your nervous system to such a large extent that you actually start having physical reactions every time there is an emotional trigger. And I'm going to dive into this in a future episode, but I just want you to know that it is safe for you to express your emotions. It is safe for you, irrespective of whether you are a man, woman, or child, or identify as anything else. Right? It is safe for you to express what you're feeling, because once you express it is the first step of starting to process it. It's okay to, curl up in a ball and just lie there and feel your emotions. Let your body feel it. Let your mind process it. It is safe. It is okay. And in fact, as a life coach, it is recommended. All right. Sign number 6 that you have a wounded inner child is that you are overly critical of yourself. Now, we all grow up in an environment where good behavior is rewarded and bad or what's the word that I'm looking for? Unsavory? No, that's food. But not, less than perfect behavior is reprimanded, or it's not rewarded, or it's discouraged, right? Which actually leads us to raising generations of humans that are overly critical towards themselves. Like, let's do a quick exercise, right? Let's do a quick experiment rather than exercise. Let's do a quick experiment. While you're listening to this, I want you to pause after of course I finish. I'll tell you when to pause and remove the timer on your phone, okay? And I want you to time how much time it takes you to come up with 10 things that are completely wrong with you, okay? Pause now and time it. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to time how much time it takes you to come up with 10 really super fucking kick-ass things about yourself. I want you to really time this. Okay, pause now. The point of this experiment is that more often than not, you will take a really short time to come up with 10 things that are wrong with you, because that's a running list in your head, right? We constantly know what's wrong with us. Oh, I've put on weight. Oh, I'm lazy. Oh, I procrastinate. Oh, my handwriting is shitty. Oh, I have to read more. There is so many things in your head going on which are so critical about yourself. But at the same time, when I tell you to list down 10 super fucking kick-ass things about yourself, I can guarantee you took at least a little bit longer than when you took to create the first list. That shows you that you have a wounded inner child, because you are overly critical towards yourself, my friend. All right, sign number 7. You are a perfectionist. This is something that I think I can do an entire podcast episode. Maybe I should do an entire podcast episode on perfectionism. But let me just quickly express the thoughts that I have. Perfectionism is bullshit. Perfectionism doesn't exist. Perfectionism doesn't exist in nature. Perfectionism doesn't exist any fucking where. It is your way of procrastinating. It is your way of stopping yourself from taking action. It is your way of expressing your fear that I'm scared of putting this out in the world. Whatever it is, it may be a post, it may be a work of art, it may be your project, it may be an idea that you have. When you are expressing perfectionistic tendencies, you're actually expressing fear towards your own capability. You're actually expressing fear about whether you're good enough or not. And that is why you love spending time being a perfectionist. And that is a massive sign of a wounded inner child. Again, I'm going to do another episode on perfectionism, because honestly, I can riff off on this for 20 minutes at least. All right. The last sign that I have listed here, I may do another episode, honestly, because there's just so many things. But I have 8 listed here, so we're going to do 8 today. The last sign that I have here that you have a wounded inner child is that you experience anxiety doing anything new. You experience this ball of anxiety down in your stomach every time you think about doing something new. Now, you may argue that it's quite natural because I'm kind of pushing myself out of the comfort zone, Um, the thing is, how many times do you push yourself out of the comfort zone, right? That's also something like there are kids, there are adults who are prone to taking risks, like day in and day out they're constantly fucking taking risks. And then people, I can guarantee you people who have been in the same space, comfortable, cuddly, nice, warm, for years at an end, right? They're not necessarily happy, but they are just so fucking scared of trying something new because there are these expectations in their head about the way they should perform. There are these expectations in their head about how success should look for them. There are these expectations in their head about how I should not really be failing. And these expectations come from a wounded inner child. They come from a space of not having security when you failed when you were a kid, not having that reassurance, not having someone have your back when you did something, when you fucked up when you were a kid, which leads you to be extremely scared to try anything new. So that is all I had for you today. The point of this episode is for you to actually start bringing awareness to any of these tendencies that you may be expressing so that we can start reframing those belief systems, because healing your inner child is absolutely fucking possible. And in a future episode I'm going to talk about steps that you can do to start this journey of healing your inner child. But that is all that I had for today. I hope you loved this episode. If you loved me talking about the inner child as much as I love talking about you. Sorry, my throat did some weird thing here, but I'm not gonna re-record because fuck perfectionism. So if you loved listening to this episode as much as I loved recording it, please leave me a review. I would really, really appreciate it. And it would help me reach more and more people like you who will benefit from listening to my podcast. Alrighty, I will talk to you soon. Thank you so much for tuning in today's episode. If you absolutely loved what you heard today, be sure to share it with me by leaving a review on iTunes so that I can keep the good stuff coming. And if you aren't already following me on social media, come soak up some extra inspiration and send me a hello on Instagram by searching @Shalvika_P. Also tagged in the show notes. I love and adore you so much, and I will talk to you super soon. In the meantime, continue building your most authentic and aligned as fuck life. Ciao!